as you take it on Monday, I drove back from Scotland, from the caravan, bringing a whole pile of stuff in the car. The boot was full and I had stuff on the back seat. So I expected, because I was going to cut across and then come down, not taking the usual Dumfries and then across the 69, to charge the car at Pacific charging site, one of two, which was either going to be Newtown, St Bosom, or 10 miles down the road to Jedburgh. But when I left, I stopped off at Kilmarnock because I wasn't full to start with, and I charged up to the 94%. I left there and I continued along, stopping off at Stonehaven and having a look in Sainsbury's, and then pulled off to have a look at the shops. Before that, I had pulled off to look at the Spirit of Scotland statue, which means I had to go off the road and then come back again. And after that, I continued to Carluke. Now, when I got to Carluke, it's not a very big place, but they had a charger at the train station, which was the only one I could remember when driving down the road where it was, even though there's two others in the town centre which were much closer, and I didn't have to do an 8-minute walk to get from the train station back to the shops. But I parked at the train station and there was two chargers, both of them working, nobody on them, so I connected up. It was going to take an hour and 15 minutes to get from where I was back up to, it was supposed to be like the 100, but I didn't, of course, get to the 100 because I wasn't bothered for it, because the 94 to 100 is just over a unit, so it's not a big amount. So I connected on at Carluke and I walked into the town, the 8 minutes, looked around the shops and came back. It was hot, so I finished off my lolly. It's bad when you have to eat a box of lollies, you know, but very pleasurable, yes. So I waited until I got to 96%, and I said, well, that'll do, because I'm going to be charging up at the two other chargers to do the final trip back with a full battery, so when I got back home I would have about 60 miles worth of range, so I didn't have to worry about going to a charger as soon as I came back. So we left well, put this way, I put 7 units in between Kilmarnock and Carluke, which would associate up to something like 35 miles worth of range distance that I would have done. The distance on the map without the little diversions off is 32.5, so the diversions probably came fairly close to that 35 mile for the 7, but I had took the percentage up to 96 and not 94, so it seems to have balanced off quite well on that the miles that I did and how much electricity went in the car were fairly close to the amount of what it was. So we left Carluke and we headed off. We stopped off at Peebles. I didn't do any charge there because I'm going just along the road to charge at one of the two chargers. So I got to the first one and there was somebody on it and they'd just got there. So it's a small place, there's nothing really to do there, there's only one supermarket, small one. So I'm going, well, I'll just go to Jedburgh and connect on to there. So I drove the 10 miles along the road to Jedburgh, and when I got there, the only charger Jedburgh has, and it was turned off. Now, I had 80 miles worth of range, and the signs were saying that I had about 60 miles to go to get home. So that would leave me with 20 miles of range left in the car if the car used precisely the amount of range to a mile. But I know on that road we have Carter Bar, which is a big up and a down. So I knew I was going to use more power getting up that hill and then regen some of it back coming back down. Well, either I could have turned round and went down another road and hoped that one of the other chargers, but then that would have took me away from where I was going and the direction, or I took faith in the car and drove it home, or at least in home's direction. Now, I didn't have to get all the way home because I thought, well, on this road we go past Kingston Park and I could go on to the charger for even an hour, and that would give me at least a decent amount of charge on the 7 kilowatt at Tesco's. So I didn't have to get all the way to my house and then plug in at home. I left Jedburgh going, yes, I have 80 miles, I have to do about 59 miles, so somewhere near the distance it said. I set off. Now, I stopped all fast accelerations and racing and that lot. I kept it gradual because I know that the road has quite a lot of ups and downs which are going to take power from the battery. Yeah, brilliant thing here. So we got to Carter Bar Hill, and when I started the climb up I had a look at my range. By the time I got to the top I'd used 8 miles of my range getting up the hill. So I have to do as much as regen as I can going down and try and get some of that back. But I only got 2 miles back letting it come down. But don't forget, we have covered the distance as well of coming up the hill and going down the hill within the distance of what miles got used. But when we got to the next mileage sign, my range was down to 14 miles to Newcastle, and I'm going, that's getting fairly low. Of course, still not worried. Well, I'm going, I know I can get to Kingston Park and I will still have range left. So we just commenced that. We weren't hard on the accelerator. We let the car's hills down, go down. I reduced the regen down to 1 on some of the hills to gain speed. If I had to go up a hill at the other side, then I might have took the regen completely off. So I gained more speed, so some of the speed went up the hill and then I reduced speed back down to a slower speed. And by the time I got to Kingston Park, I still had range left. I knew I was in range of a number of charges that I could get onto, and I knew that even if I drove home, I would still have something left, but nothing to get to any charger after that. I would really struggle if I just came the back. So I ended up with 19 miles on the display when I got back. Now, if you remember, I said at Jedburgh I had 20 miles. It said I would have when I got to Newcastle. When I got to Kingston Park, which is 3 miles away from Newcastle, I had 19 miles. So it would have had 16 miles, so I would have lost 4 miles, even though I took it fairly gentle and not peaked the power off. But still, there was no worry, there was no turtle mode, there was nothing of that. So I had confidence that the car could do the range that it displayed, and my confidence was correct. Simply because I watched the miles. When I came to a mile post, I said X amount of miles, I've got that, which means I've got this much spare. Okay, are we doing alright with taking it easy and not racing and trying to race corners and keep up with cars and stuff like that. I couldn't do any slipstreaming behind other vehicles because there wasn't any in front of us. It was quite empty in front of us. I had cars behind that were much more in a hurry than I was. I wasn't really in that much of a hurry anyway, but I was still doing almost the speed limit for the road. But I took it a little bit more gentler, allowing the car to slow down and regen when it had any choice to do that, to take corners or anything like that, a more slower acceleration up. But there was no stress. There was no, I'm going to run out. No, there wasn't any of that. But I was immensely disappointed that, once again, when you look at the charges that I went to, there was only one of them. And the places that I went to, the whole place only had the one charger. Even though I was at Ioniq, and that had 3 different charge places within half a mile of it. So, and one of them was a fast one and the rest were 7. So, and they were all working. So therefore you get a little bit disappointed that you come to other towns and there is only one single charger, and it was off when I got to Jedburgh. And I'm going, that's quite ridiculous. Why is it off? Because my app said it was available for the Charge Card Scotland, didn't say that it was off. It said ready to use. There was no, it isn't working for it. So I was assuming, and that's why you don't assume, and that's why you don't go down to running out. If I had not charged at Ioniq and put 7 units of power into the car, I could not have got home, and therefore I would have had to have tried another route to try and get some power, because I wouldn't have made it anywhere else. From Jedburgh down to Ponteland, there is no chargers to charge up. And that may not seem like a big distance for many cars, but if you've only got a small battery, then it is. And if you are relying on driving from one point to Jedburgh and fuel at Jedburgh to go on, then you are stuffed. So I still got home. It was a little later than I planned because of the time on a much slower charger. The Jedburgh one is a 50. I would have spent 25 minutes or less charging up, and I would have arrived home with about 50-60 miles worth of range, which therefore I wouldn't have needed to put anything in and sit around. But I didn't sit in the car when I was at Kingston Park for the charge. I went into Tesco's, I went into the shops, I went into McDonald's and got something for tea, and that was the time I was there. But weirdly, the charger, after I got there, got really full, that there was a car waiting. So when I'm coming back and I'm going, well, even I had a look, I had about 49%, so I said, well, that'll do. So I went to the Tesla, because it was a Tesla, and I said, you are trying to get on the charger, aren't you? He said, yeah. I said, I'm just moving, and you can take my place, so just so you can get ready, and so no one doesn't turn up and pull straight in while you're trying to put your stuff away. And so he got ready, I pulled out, I went out slowly so I could see him, he was moving, so then I could move and make sure there was a clear road so he could take the space that I was in. So I got home, and as I said, I could have got home. I could have just got home and put it on the charger at home and put a couple of units in so I could easily get back to another charger and charge up. But I didn't. Yesterday I didn't go to a charger. Today I don't know if I'm going to a charger because I've still got miles now from what I put in. But I do like having it more fuller with a much bigger range. So I haven't decided whether I'm going to go out the day or just leave it till tomorrow. But with that, if it doesn't go to plan, you have to think ahead and just say, I got to a charger, put some charge in. It may not be much, 7 units, but 7 units for me is a quarter of my tank. So therefore, we could just call it a tank. It's much easier for you who may not have an electric car to say that I filled the car back up. And because I filled the car back up, I had 140 odd miles worth of range. Now, the range between Carluke and Kingston Park was a 120, or was it 122 mile? I looked it up. I took a picture, a screenshot, so I put that up and you can see the route that I took. I arrived with 19. So that, I think it worked out that I had 139 miles worth of range, even though I had 146. So I lost 7 miles worth of range that wasn't being used on the road. But I kept the sat nav on. I had my radio USB stick on, playing music. I didn't have any air conditioning. I had the window open a slight amount if it was hot. Don't forget I have the wind deflectors. They aren't seem to be affecting anything for drag, so I can have the window open and it doesn't seem to have any effect. If it was too hot and I had to put the cooler on, I would have lost 5 miles worth of range off. So I didn't need it because it wasn't that hot to need it. So no heating, no cooling, just all the electronics in the car, which have to be charged up, don't forget, from the big battery, charges the little one. So while you're driving, whenever the little battery needs to be topped up, the big one will do it, so you will lose some range off. But you also have to take it that, how is it doing the calculation for Carluke to my Kingston Park when the road goes up and down, and especially up at Carter's Bar, that the loss range isn't very big for the miles I covered. So if I covered 120 miles and the difference from my miles to how much I had left in range is only like 6-7 miles, that's not a massive amount. When you look at that, that's technically 1 unit, possibly, of electricity. And divide the 7 by that, and you're looking at 120, 130 watts worth of power over that distance. So it isn't a massive amount difference for that trip. But when I got home, when I turned the car off, my car still had 5.5 miles to a unit, so I still got, even though I had ups and downs hills, I still had my good range with carrying all the weight that I had in the car. With that long talk, please like, comment and subscribe. I will see you on the next video. So, bye for now.